The church was quiet that morning. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes your chest ache, not because of peace, but because of absence. I sat there on the front row, staring at the simple wooden coffin that held my husband's body. The man I loved for 12 years. The man who stood by me through every storm. And yet, when I turned around to face the seats behind me, they were nearly empty. No familiar faces. No mother wiping her tears. No father offering his hand on my shoulder. Not even my best friend, the woman I thought would stand beside me in my darkest hour. Nobody from my family had come. Nobody. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34 years old. I live in a small town in Ohio, where people usually know everything about everyone. I work as a nurse, and I've always been the type of person who takes care of others first. That was the role I played in my family too, the responsible daughter, the reliable sister, the loyal friend. I thought I had people who loved me. I thought I had people who would never let me down. But as I sat at my husband's funeral, my heart breaking into pieces, I realized something I wish I had known much earlier. Sometimes the people closest to you can be the cruelest. My husband, Daniel, deserved better than this. He was kind, gentle, the sort of man who opened doors for strangers and shoveled our neighbor's driveway without being asked. When we got married, my best friend was my maid of honor. My parents danced at the reception. My brother gave a heartfelt toast. Back then, I believed we were all one big family, tightly woven together. But grief is a strange teacher. It strips away every illusion and shows you who people truly are. I remember clutching the program in my hands that morning, the paper trembling because my fingers wouldn't stop shaking. I scanned the room one more time, hoping, praying to see even a single familiar face walking through those double doors. But no one came. And in that moment, the truth cut sharper than the loss of my husband. Not only was I a widow, I was utterly alone. People from the community came, neighbors, Daniel's co-workers, even patients he had once helped. They filled the space, offered hugs, said the right words. But the absence of my own blood, of the people I had trusted most, rang louder than anything else. And as the pastor's words floated through the air, I felt something inside me shift. I thought grief would destroy me. But what broke me even more was abandonment. I sat there, dry-eyed, my heart slowly hardening. And I whispered to myself words that would guide everything that came next. Blood doesn't always mean family. And one day, they'll regret leaving me alone. Before my world fell apart, I thought my life was steady, even blessed. Daniel and I built a quiet life together, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We lived in a modest 2-story house with a white porch swing out front. Every morning, he'd brew the coffee while I packed our lunches. It was the kind of routine that people might call boring, but to me, it was comfort, safety, love. My family had always been a big part of my life. My mother would call me at least 3 times a week, usually to check in or gossip about relatives. My father had this quiet pride in me. He didn't say much, but whenever I came home, he'd always make sure my car's oil was changed, my tires checked. Small acts of care that spoke louder than words. And then there was Melissa, my best friend since middle school. She was the one who held my hand through heartbreaks, the one who stood beside me on my wedding day, the one who promised, "We'll grow old together, no matter what." I trusted her with everything. She knew every secret, every weakness, every dream. Daniel adored all of them. He'd often say, "Emily, you're lucky. Not everyone has such a supportive circle." I believed him. I believed I had people who would carry me through any storm. I can still picture Thanksgiving dinners at my parents' house. The long table covered in mismatched dishes, the smell of turkey filling the air, my dad carving the bird while everyone laughed. Daniel would slip his hand into mine under the table, smile, and whisper, "This is home." Those moments felt unshakable, like roots sinking deep into the ground. Looking back now, I realized there were cracks I chose not to see. My mother sometimes made cutting remarks about Daniel. Not cruel, just dismissive. "He's a nice man, Emily, but maybe not ambitious enough," she'd say, as if the size of his paycheck determined his worth. My father would nod silently, never disagreeing, never defending him. And Melissa, sometimes her jokes had an edge. She'd tease me about settling down too soon, about choosing Daniel instead of chasing bigger things. I laughed them off, because at the time, I couldn't imagine malice behind their words. Daniel noticed, though. He'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "Don't let them get to you." He had this calm wisdom, this steady patience I leaned on. I used to think nothing could shake us, not as long as we had each other. Our weekends were simple joys. Movie nights with popcorn spilled across the couch. Road trips to nowhere, where we'd sing along to the radio like teenagers. Evenings on that porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky while we talked about dreams we hadn't yet chased. Daniel wanted kids someday. I wanted to go back to school, maybe become a nurse practitioner. We made lists of baby names. We mapped out plans for the future. It all felt so real, so secure. A life built on love, surrounded by family and friends. But sometimes, security blinds you. You stop questioning. You stop looking too closely at the people you trust most. I thought my family would always be there. I thought Melissa would be by my side no matter what. I thought love and loyalty were unshakable foundations. What I didn't realize, what I couldn't see back then, was that the very people I trusted most were already slipping away. And the day Daniel died, those cracks became canyons. After Daniel passed, I thought grief would pull my family closer to me. That's what families do, right? They circle around the one who's hurting. They hold you up when you can't stand on your own. At least, that's what I believed. But almost immediately, I felt the shift. My calls to my mother went unanswered. The rare time she picked up, her tone was clipped, distracted, as if I were bothering her with my grief. "Emily, you need to stay strong," she'd say flatly. "Crying won't bring him back." No warmth. No comfort. Just words that stung more than silence. My father stopped calling altogether. The man who once checked my car every time I visited suddenly had no time to even ask how I was surviving. When I tried to visit, the doors were closed, excuses ready. "We're busy. It's not a good time." I told myself maybe they were grieving too. Maybe they just didn't know how to show it. But deep down, something didn't feel right. And Melissa, she was worse. At first, she promised she'd be there. "Day or night, just call me," she said. But when I actually did, her phone was always on silent, or she'd reply with a short text, "Can't talk right now." Days turned into weeks, and my so-called best friend, my sister in everything but blood, was nowhere to be found. The loneliness cut deeper with every passing day. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie in bed, clutching Daniel's pillow, trying to breathe through the weight on my chest. That's when the doubts began to whisper. Why wasn't my family here? Why didn't Melissa show up? What had I done to deserve this kind of abandonment? Neighbors came by with casseroles, flowers, kind words. Strangers hugged me, coworkers checked in. But the silence from the people who were supposed to matter most, it screamed louder than any comfort offered by others. I remember one Sunday afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. I just wanted to sit with them, to feel like I still had a family. But when I pulled into the driveway, I froze. Through the window, I could see them laughing at the dinner table. Plates full, glasses clinking. A normal family meal. My family. And yet, nobody had thought to invite me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring through that window, my stomach twisting. It wasn't that they were busy. It wasn't that they didn't know how to handle grief. They had simply chosen to move on without me. The next week, I tried Melissa again. I stopped by her apartment, unannounced. She opened the door with a surprised look. No, not surprise. Guilt. Her hair was done, she was dressed to go out, and behind her I saw a group of people laughing, music playing. A party. She hadn't even told me. She mumbled something about bad timing, and closed the door quickly, leaving me standing in the hallway like I was nothing. That night, I realized something dark. I hadn't lost just my husband. I was losing everyone. The world around me began to change colors. Where once there was warmth, now there was only cold distance. Where once I heard love, now there was silence, avoidance, excuses. I stopped believing in the words, "We're family," or "best friends forever," because actions speak louder, and their actions were telling me the truth. Still, I said nothing. I kept quiet. But my eyes were wide open now. I started noticing the way my mother dodged my calls when she was out shopping with my sister. I saw Melissa's social media posts, parties, dinners, vacations, while I was drowning alone in my grief. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I just watched. Observed. Every silence. Every absence. Every betrayal. And then, one night, when the house was dark and my heart was restless, I picked up my phone. Melissa had posted a picture. Smiling, wine glass in hand. The caption read, "Life's too short to waste on sadness." And that's when the truth hit me harder than anything else. I wasn't forgotten. I was discarded. The night that changed everything didn't come with thunder or lightning. It came quietly, like a knife slipped between ribs. I had gone weeks without hearing from Melissa. Not a call, not a visit, not even a simple text asking how I was holding up. One evening, unable to sleep, I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone. That's when I saw it, her name flashing across the screen. Not a message to me, but a notification from a mutual friend's post. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. It was a group photo. Melissa was smiling, arms wrapped around people I didn't know. Wine glasses raised. In the background, balloons spelled out, "New beginnings." But what made my stomach drop wasn't the photo. It was the comment section. I scrolled, and there it was. A comment from Melissa herself. "Thank God I didn't waste my weekend at that funeral. Life's too short for pity parties." My chest tightened, breath catching in my throat. At first, I thought maybe it was a cruel joke, some misunderstanding. But as I read it again and again, the words carved themselves into me. My best friend. The woman who once promised she'd be there through everything, mocking the darkest day of my life. I wanted to scream, to call her, to demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there in silence, the glow of the phone lighting up the tears streaming down my face. Later that same week, I tried one more time with my parents. I needed to believe someone still cared. I drove to their house, heart heavy but hopeful. When I walked up to the porch, I heard voices inside. Laughter. Clinking dishes. I hesitated, then gently pushed the door open. There they were, my parents, my siblings, cousins. A full family dinner. A celebration. And on the table sat a cake with the words, "Family First," written in frosting. I stood frozen in the doorway, invisible to the people I loved most. Nobody had invited me. Nobody even acknowledged me when I stepped inside. My mother glanced up, saw me, and her smile faltered for just a second before she turned back to the conversation, pretending nothing happened. My father didn't even look my way. I left before they could speak. My legs felt heavy, my vision blurred. Outside, under the night sky, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. They weren't just absent because of grief. They had made a choice. A deliberate choice to shut me out, to erase me from their lives. That night, sitting alone in my car, I felt something inside me break. But it wasn't the kind of break that leaves you shattered forever. It was the kind that sharpens you. I didn't cry. Not anymore. My tears had dried somewhere between the funeral and that dinner table. Instead, I felt a stillness settle inside me. A cold, focused calm. And in that silence, a single thought formed, clear and unshakable. They thought they had abandoned me. But what they didn't realize is that I was done being the abandoned one. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to beg for love. I wasn't going to chase people who mocked my pain or turned their backs when I needed them most. I was going to plan. And when I was finished, they would understand what it meant to leave me standing alone at my husband's grave. After that night, the grief in me began to change form. It was no longer the kind that left me curled on the floor, begging for answers. It became sharper, colder, like steel being forged in fire. I stopped waiting for apologies, stopped waiting for someone to knock on my door with comfort. Instead, I started planning. Daniel used to tell me, "Emily, strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits." His words came back to me now. I wasn't going to scream, or beg, or fight in the open. No. I was going to be silent, patient, precise. The first thing I did was gather proof. It started with screenshots, the comment Melissa had left, her texts I had saved, every post and picture that proved how easily she had erased me from her life. Then came the recordings. I began recording conversations with my parents whenever they did pick up the phone. Their words, cold, dismissive, even mocking at times, would tell the story they tried to keep hidden. I made copies of everything. Printed emails. Saved voicemails. Backed up files to drives they could never touch. I wasn't sure yet how I'd use it all, but I knew one day I would need it. Next, I called Daniel's lawyer. My family didn't know this, but Daniel had left behind more than memories. His life insurance, his savings, even the house, everything had my name on it. And yet, whispers began to reach me. That my parents were telling people I couldn't manage alone, that maybe the estate should pass to someone more responsible. I smiled at those rumors, because by the time they spoke them out loud, I had already secured every account, every asset. Legal documents filed. Locks changed. Nothing could be touched without my consent. And Melissa, sweet, fake Melissa, had been careless. She owed me money. A loan from years back, small enough that I never pressed her. But I hadn't forgotten. I dug through my old journals, found the signed note she had written promising repayment. With interest, the debt was no longer small. Quietly, I had my lawyer send her a formal notice. No threats. No shouting. Just paper with my name at the top and hers at the bottom. The beauty of silence is that it makes people underestimate you. They thought I was broken, fragile, too consumed by grief to stand. They didn't see the way I watched, the way I documented, the way I moved every piece into place. At night, I'd sit at Daniel's old desk, papers spread out before me like a battle plan. His photo beside me, his steady eyes reminding me of the soldier he once was, of the strength he saw in me even when I didn't. I whispered to him often, "I'll make them see, not just what they did to me, but what they lost when they turned their backs." Weeks turned into months. Outwardly, I played the part they expected, the quiet widow, fading into the background. Inwardly, I built an unshakable foundation. I reached out to a few trusted people. Neighbors who had seen my family ignore me. Co-workers who witnessed my nights spent alone. Friends from Daniel's unit who respected him deeply. One by one, they agreed to stand with me when the time came. Not out of pity, but out of truth. And slowly, I began to withdraw completely from those who had abandoned me. Calls unanswered. Doors closed. Birthdays ignored. I gave them exactly what they had given me. Nothing. But unlike them, I had purpose in my silence. I didn't want revenge in the form of screaming matches or slammed doors. I wanted something deeper. I wanted them exposed, for the world to see the truth of who they were. I wanted the image they had crafted for themselves, loving parents, loyal friend, to shatter under the weight of their own betrayal. And so I waited, patient, silent, planning every step. Because revenge, I learned, doesn't come from anger. It comes from clarity. And mine had never been sharper. The day everything came together was quieter than I expected. No dramatic thunder in the sky, no storm raging outside. Just an ordinary Tuesday morning, the kind of day my family and Melissa never saw coming. It started in court. Melissa had ignored the debt notice I sent her, laughing it off as if I would never dare pursue it. But she didn't know I had every legal document signed by her, dated, undeniable. When the judge called her name, she walked in with that smug confidence she always carried. But it vanished the moment my lawyer laid the papers on the table. Her face drained of color as the judge read her own handwriting aloud. The debt was real. The interest undeniable. Her laughter turned into stammering excuses, none of which mattered. By the end of that hearing, she wasn't mocking me anymore. She was paying me. Every dollar she thought I'd forgotten. But that was only the beginning. My parents had built a reputation in our community as pillars of family values. Always the ones to host dinners, always preaching about loyalty and togetherness. I had stayed silent long enough to let them believe they'd succeeded in cutting me out quietly. But silence can be a weapon. And now, it was time to use it. At a local community event, where dozens of neighbors gathered, I requested a moment to speak. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I simply pressed play on my phone. Out came the recordings, my mother dismissing me, my father mocking Daniel, their cold words dripping with disdain for the very people they pretended to care about. Gasps filled the room. Neighbors who once admired them turned to stare with open disgust. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just let the truth echo through the speakers. Melissa was there too, another twist of fate. She tried to laugh it off, but I had more. Screenshots of her cruel comment about Daniel's funeral projected on the wall for everyone to see. The same neighbor she partied with now stared at her like she was poison. The silence in that room was heavier than any scream could have been. And in that silence, I stood taller than I ever had before. By the time it ended, the damage was irreversible. My parents' reputation collapsed in a single afternoon. Melissa's mask cracked beyond repair. The people who abandoned me were exposed for what they truly were: selfish, heartless, and false. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to beg for understanding. The truth had spoken for me. When I walked out of that hall, I felt Daniel's presence with me. Not the crushing grief of losing him, but the strength he always believed I had. I imagined him smiling, proud that I had fought this war without raising a fist, without lowering myself to their level. Revenge didn't taste sweet in the way I thought it might. It wasn't fireworks or applause. It was quiet, calm. A deep exhale after months of holding my breath. And the best part? Watching them crumble not because I destroyed them, but because they destroyed themselves. It's been over a year since that day, and life looks very different now. The house is quieter, yes, but not empty. It holds peace instead of tension, calm instead of loneliness. For the first time in a long time, I can sit on my porch swing, breathe in the evening air, and feel free. My family never apologized. They never tried to repair what they broke. And honestly, I no longer care. The same neighbors who once looked up to them now avoid them, whispering about the truth they can't erase. Melissa moved out of town not long after the court ruling, running from the shame she created for herself. None of them are part of my life anymore, and that absence feels less like a loss and more like a blessing. I built something new. A smaller circle, yes, but one made of people who chose to stay when things were hard. Neighbors who still check in. Co-workers who became true friends. Daniel's army buddy, who visits every few weeks just to sit on the porch with me and share stories about the man we both miss. Grief still visits me, sometimes unexpectedly. A song on the radio. The smell of coffee in the morning. The empty space in bed where Daniel used to be. But I've learned that grief doesn't mean weakness. It means love. And love never really leaves, it just changes form. The biggest lesson I've learned? Family isn't always blood. Sometimes, the people we think will stand by us are the first to disappear. And sometimes, strangers step in and show us more kindness than those who share our name. I used to think revenge would be fire and fury. But in the end, it wasn't about destroying them. It was about freeing myself. Exposing the truth wasn't for them. It was for me. To release the weight of silence. To prove, mostly to myself, that I was stronger than they ever believed. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the broken widow they left behind. I see a woman who survived abandonment, betrayal, and loss, and still found a way to rise. Daniel once told me, "You're tougher than you think, Emily. One day you'll see it." He was right. They took my comfort. They took my trust. They left me alone at the lowest point of my life. But they couldn't take my soul. They couldn't take my will to keep moving forward. And from that, I rebuilt everything. Not for them. Not for revenge. But for me. And that is something they will never be able to take away.